The dangers of live sound. How and why you should use in-ear monitors in your worship team. That's the topic of discussion on today's Making Sunday Happen. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 401 of our show. If you missed last week's 400th episode, be sure to jump back and watch or listen to that show as we welcome Chris Tomlin. I also showed a clip of my interview with Craig Groeschel, pastor and author. He's got a brand new book coming out, and that full episode with Craig Groeschel is going to be airing and releasing this fall. But last week we had a full interview with Chris Tomlin, and it's on YouTube. It's on all of your favorite podcast platforms, so be sure to jump back and watch that show. It was really great and really just a joy to talk to Chris. So be sure to jump back and catch that one if you would. We also have some other great guests coming in this next season of shows. Over the next few months and into the fall. We have Daniel Gorley from Worship Leader Probs and 5 Words Media. We have my friend Katie Allred. We're going to be talking about her church communications book. We have worship leader Shane and Shane, pastor and author Kyle Idleman. He's the senior pastor, lead pastor at Southeast Christian Church, one of the largest and fastest growing churches in the country. It was great to talk to Kyle. That interview's in the can as well. You're going to love hearing from him. He's super down to earth, just a great guy. But all those guests and more are coming up in the next few weeks. But today I'm talking with Greg Shields. Greg is the lead singer of the band Kashed Out. Their Butter the World tour is making its way across the country right now to sold-out crowds. He is a singer, songwriter, and performer using InEarz Audio Monitors. And I'm talking with Greg about the basics of in-ear monitors, why you should use them in worship, the best models to use, and more. Greg Shields is on the way after this. Hey guys, let me give you one quick way to connect with your volunteers outside of Sunday to help you build a dynamic volunteer culture at your church. Serve them in some way. One of the best ways to show appreciation for your volunteers is to give back to them, is to serve them in some way. Take a couple of your volunteers out to lunch, have them over for dinner, or give them a small gift as a way of saying thank you. Also, major life events and celebrations are a time where you serving your team will be greatly remembered. The diaper drives, meal trains, hospital visits, birthday cards are ways that you can serve your team when they need it most. Also, serve them in those moments and also serve them in other moments as well. Be intentional about serving and pastoring your team. By taking the time to connect with your volunteers in these small but meaningful ways, you can create a sense of community and belonging within your church and within your team. Not only will this help your volunteers feel valued, feel appreciated, but it will also help you create the kind of culture in your volunteers that you want to see. So be intentional with your volunteers. Pastor your people first. Hey guys, Carl Barnhill here. I'm hanging out with Greg Shields from InEarz Audio. What's going on, Greg?
I'm having a great day already.
Awesome, man. Well, it's going to get even better right here.
Perfect.
So get ready, buddy.
That's what I showed up for.
All right, so have you done your workshop already, or are you doing it this afternoon? Okay, talk me through a little bit, kind of an overview of what you shared in that workshop.
Well, we talked about the dangers of live sound, because that's important. I want to raise awareness. But it's not always dangerous. It doesn't have to be. And in-ears can be a safe option. So we talked a little bit about that, and then we walked through the ins and outs and what is required to use them. because it's a little bit more than the earpiece.
Right. So talk me through that difference. Earpiece versus an in-ear.
Well, the earpiece is the in-ear, but it has to run through some equipment. And most people don't realize that when they're making that purchase. So you have a stage box, the wireless transmitter receiver, an RF antenna, all those things that are included or not included, but necessary to the operation. But you don't have to be wireless. You can go hardwired. Some keyboard players will, they don't really move much, so you can kind of go direct in. But a lot of singers will want to be wireless, and that at least requires a transmitter and receiver.
Okay, so let's talk through the difference in in-ears and floor monitors.
This is my favorite discussion.
Let's go, man.
I'm not a big fan of floor monitors. I'll tell you why. They took a lot of my hearing. I actually had an injury due to a floor monitor that was very loud. And it's really not the floor monitor's fault. It's not the sound engineer's fault. It was my own fault because I kept saying, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up, not realizing that my hearing was going. And eventually it was gone. It was too late. And I thought, at the time, man, why aren't these things loud enough? They're 15-inch monitors. But it was my own doing.
So walk me through maybe some first steps. Obviously, we want to go towards in-ears as opposed to wedges or floor monitors.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's advantages and disadvantages to floor wedges. The advantages are far less. What you can't do with a floor wedge is cue a song. So a drummer can have a song cue, song title 2, 3, 4, and then everybody starts at the same time. On a floor wedge, everybody's going to hear that, and that's part of production. That's kind of behind the scenes. You don't really want to share all that with the entire community. And then also keeping time. This is kind of pertaining to drummers, but it really pertains to everybody. I know in the bands that I've played in, I like everybody to be on the metronome. Keeps a nice tight performance. Everybody starts and ends on the same time, and everything. Every worship service has got a start and an end time. You want to stay on time. So within your monitors, you're able to have everybody just hear things. You can communicate with the sound guy. If something's going wrong, or maybe you're going overtime, he can tell you that without everybody hearing it.
All right, let's get into molds. So universal molds can fit anyone. Why should I pay the money to get a custom mold?
You're going to get a better seal. Everything's it's safer. It's like saying, well, do I want half of an earplug or the whole earplug? You're gonna hear everything much better with a custom mold. There are advantages to universal. If you are, let's say all of the gear is purchased by the church and needs to stay with the church and not the individual, and maybe maybe they cycle through singers in the worship band. That's something that you can clean them off and pass them along to somebody else. Maybe, there's a 10:30 service and a 12 o'clock service, and they all need to use the same gear. That would be a good option for universals. And they don't not fit. You still get a good seal. It's just they're not going to stay in as much. Sometimes worship moves you, and you don't want your ears to fall out.
Yeah, good. All right, talk to me about how having in-ear monitors, I can create my own individual mix and just some advantages of that.
So if you were on floor wedges, you would have, and you have like maybe 7 singers. There's not going to be, often the stage doesn't have room to accommodate 7 different floor monitors. So everybody wants something different in their mix. And your sound guy can go crazy trying to please every single person. Maybe one person wants their vocal plenty loud, and if the other person wants theirs loud, but that's too loud for someone else, you're going to want to have individual mixes, and you can achieve that with the in-ear monitors and your digital mixer.
So with this, walk me through the benefits of having that somebody on monitors in the back of the stage, maybe mixing your individual mix versus front of house.
They can hear what you're hearing. If the engineer is also on ears, then he's able to, somebody's going, there's this crazy sound, and he's not hearing it in the front of house. He's able to check what's going on, just have a more accurate depiction of what you're hearing.
Good. All right, couple more questions for you. You guys be thinking of some things that you struggle with. I'll come to you guys here in a minute. We'll kind of have a discussion together. Talk to me about choosing the right earpiece.
That can be, it's very subjective. Everybody wants to hear something different, like I said, in the monitor. Just depends on what you like in your mix. There's a lot of different configurations. The in-ear monitors have drivers, which is a fancy word for speakers. And they have different crossover settings just to suit everyone's needs. So a bass player is going to want more low end, and so we have models that are, have 2 dedicated low end drivers. It splits them, splits the lows, the mids, and the highs into different configurations. And I would encourage everyone to stop by the booth that we have. It's over by the women's restroom, and we have lots of different models to choose from.
Talk to me about safe operation, making sure that maybe something that happened to you doesn't happen.
Yes. So what happened to me did not happen with in-ear monitors, but that doesn't mean that it can't. Obviously, when you plug something in that's going to go in your ears, you want to keep your volume low at first, if not completely muted, and then bring it up. Any spikes in sound, so unplugging, always, and it kind of goes for all sound. When you're live, you want to not just unplug your microphone when you're walking off stage until you're muted in the house. It's kind of the same thing with the ears. You don't want to turn on any equipment or plug anything in when everybody's got their ears in. You want to just make sure that that's at a safe volume.
Good. All right, let's go to you guys. What are you guys struggling with in this world?
Finding questions, perhaps?
Everybody's perfect. Let me repeat that for the podcast. So, what should I look for when going to purchase in-ears?
Well, safety is important. One thing I didn't mention was in-ears do tend to seal pneumatic pressure inside your ear canal. And one thing that I would say to look for, and this is not just being biased, this is for your safety. Some companies, only a couple, actually address that pneumatic pressure. We are one of them. And so I would definitely look for that because you don't want to be ultimately damaging your hearing. I would look for that. I would look for in the wireless transmitter receiver. Those run on there's 2 different types. There's UHF and VHF. That's very high frequency and ultra high frequency. Don't even bother with the VHF. That's the short answer. Everything operates, a lot of commercial products operate on VHF, so you're going to get radio interference if you're running that, and everybody shows up with their cell phones and tablets and all that stuff. So ultra high frequency is the way to go.
Good. Anybody else? Yeah, man. Repeat that for us.
Could you say that one more time?
So, supply chain problems? Mm-hmm. Oh.
For the earpiece or for just all?
To get it faster?
Everything.
Are there any supply chain problems right now getting them in?
Yeah, I haven't tried to purchase in a while as I work for an in-ear monitor company. I know that we currently aren't having major supply chain issues, but that happens with probably every company. But if you're looking for an alternative to Shure, there's also Sennheiser. As far as the wireless transmitter and receiver goes, those are the two brands that I would pretty much recommend. Anything else is likely going to be on that VHF spectrum. But as far as the professional world goes, I would say Sennheiser or the Shure. And I'm sure there's probably some companies that are pretty good. It just depends on your application. If you're just a one speaker and there's no gear behind you and there's nothing to interfere, then you might find some cheaper options. But I would just make sure they're UHF.
Good. Yeah.
I've never heard of them. I'm sorry. Galaxy Audio, it might be pretty good. Worth checking out, I would say.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah.
In application, what are some ways that you found successful for bringing immersion in, like using room lights and that kind of stuff? Because InEarz can be so isolating, just in helping performers feel like they're part of the room, the audience, that kind of stuff that you kind of lose when you put something.
Bring in immersion, so
Yes.
you feel the band member could feel disconnected if I'm wearing in-ears.
That's a great question. It is probably the most common thing that you'll see within your monitors is somebody popping one out. We talked about this yesterday. I know you were there. Basically, it's very bad to pop an ear out because our bodies have this thing called a stapedius reflex, and that happens in stereo. It's your natural volume control. So because you have something in your ear, it thinks a bomb is going off, and it's way louder than it should be, so it turns us down, and we go, it's not loud enough, and we turn it up, and then you're constantly fighting your own body. To get around that, you can put dynamic mics on the stage facing the crowd, provided that you have enough channels in your mixer, and that usually is the solution right now. There are some companies, I know Sensophonics has a binary microphone built in that does require an extra belt pack, and I've tried it. It's not anything amazing, but it does kind of help with that problem if you don't have enough channels. But I would go personally with the dynamic microphones on either side of the stage or in the middle if you only have one, and that way you have a lot more control over what you're hearing, and it can help to feel less isolated. But I do not recommend pulling an ear out because your stapedius reflex happens in stereo. It does not know that you've got one in and one out.
Good to know. All right, be sure to check Greg out at InEarz Audio, and you can check us out, more audio training for your team, audio volunteers, audio training at makingsundayhappen.com, or you can pick up our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, the Making Sunday Happen podcast. Greg, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. If you have any more questions, I'll be at the booth in the back of the room.
Hey guys, hanging out with Jason Noble, host of the Kidmin Tribe podcast. Jason, give me some of your heart, man. Why do you serve kids ministry leaders and volunteers? Why do you have such a passion for these folks?
Yeah, definitely. So I have been a children's pastor. I've been in the trenches with children's ministry leaders. I'm now a lead pastor, but my heart has been, how do we train and equip, especially in the area of volunteers, especially with volunteers, people that are serving. I think kids ministry is one of those areas that we are constantly needing more resources, constantly needing encouragement. It's one of the most important aspects and areas of the church today as we're raising up a generation of kids that it is challenging. It's challenging for the parents. We're talking about topics that we've never had to talk about before, how we navigate that, how we walk through that. And really, I think if you were to boil it down to one kind of idea is, I want to be there to encourage our children's leaders, to talk about the tough topics that we're having to walk through right now in kids ministry, to look at things. I mean, we've had a whole revamp of how we do kids ministry after COVID. Many churches are retooling and relooking at that. And it's been fun to be a voice in that process, and really looking at ways that we can come alongside and encourage and make their Sunday morning experiences better. And so if you haven't had a chance to watch the podcast, I encourage you to go to kidmantribe.com, where we have archived podcasts. We have brand new podcasts that are on every other week. You can find that again at kidmantribe.com.
Hey guys, as we close today, we've been doing these 5 question segments at the end of some of our podcasts with our guests, just to lighten the mood, just to have a little bit of fun. And I wanted to share one with you that we did a while back with worship leader Elias Dummer. Check this out, and I'll be back to wrap things up. Number 1, what is the number 1 mistake that music or worship leaders make on stage on Sundays?
Oh, wow. Can I make it a 2-part?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Volume 1 and Volume 2, you might say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think we talked about the first part earlier, asking too much too soon. I think, when people are coming into their pew on Sunday, they are not a musician. They are not prepared. They did not have a prayer practice in the car while their 5-year-old was screaming at them. They were just tying up booties on the way out the door, signing into a class and going pee. And then they've sat down in their chair. And so expecting them to be ready to go to the highest heavens or the most exuberant happy clappy jump, my rule is don't open with your banger. It's like proposing on the first date. So that's
good.
That's probably number 1.
Okay.
And number 2 is to operate as if what you're doing, even if it's prayerful, isn't a collaborative human experience. Look people in the eye, treat them like humans, be a human yourself on stage. And I think you'll find that people's trust for you and where you're trying to go together is greatly increased.
Good. Number 2, what is your favorite song to worship to right now?
Oh man, right now I have a tendency to go old when I feel disconnected or when I feel unanchored and after the big move. So I've honestly just been sitting in the Psalter and singing stuff from the Psalter lately. I really, really, really love, what's it called? Darn, I can't remember. It's just been a crazy season with the move and everything. So yeah. I'm kind of turning.
You're in move brain right now.
Yeah,
That's what's going
I'm
on.
so sorry.
No, you're fine. All right. What is something that you wish you were better at?
Oh, everything. It's been important to me to continue to be understanding and empathetic and compassionate. But that's probably the area, even though I've been working on it for years and years and years, and it's probably the area that I most wish to continue growing in.
All right, last one. What characteristic do you most admire in another musician or song leader?
Oh man. Characteristic as a human or characteristic on stage?
Sure. Either one.
Those two things line up. I think for me, there's a lot of people who are really, really talented and skilled who seem to struggle to treat you like a person. And I aspire,
when you're off stage, you mean?
Off stage, whatever context, I aspire to look. If I'm going to be a Christian, anything, I sure should hope that I treat people with respect and dignity, and that I'm curious and interested in people, even if I'm tired. And I think there's, I hope that that's true of me. I hope to continue to be curious. And I really respect that's whenever you meet in music land and you meet people who met another musician and they say that guy's the real deal. That's all they're ever talking about. That's all they're ever talking about.
Yeah. Very good point. All right, guys, the new album, The Work Volume 2, is available now. Elias, man, thanks for the time.
Thank you, sir. This is good fun.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
But hey, guys, thanks so much for hanging out this week. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would. You can catch this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. But please take a moment and share the show on your social media and talk with us. Feel free to reach out with questions, comments, guests that you'd like to see, or anything else. You can email me directly at Carl, C-A-R-L, at 1230.media. That's all spelled out, the word 12, the word 30.media. carl@1230.media. Or you can find our show online at makingsundayhappen.com. That's makingsundayhappen.com. You'll find over 400 episodes of our show. We have weekly episodes and then some bonus episodes along the way too, with all types of guests from artists to pastors to tech guys, content producers, and more. It's all at makingsundayhappen.com. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Go out there and create some incredible worship experiences at your church this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.